My wife took a sip of her wine, set the glass down, and told me she'd been sleeping with the contractor we hired to remodel our kitchen. Then she smiled and asked if I wanted to know how many times. I didn't answer. I didn't even put my fork down. I just got up, walked to my truck, and drove 3 blocks to the bank before they closed. By the time she figured out what I'd done, she was screaming into a voicemail that nobody was ever going to hear. My name is Russell Mathers. I'm 51. I live just outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. And for 23 years, I ran the body shop my old man left me when he passed. Hail country. We do good business. I've got 11 guys on payroll, 2 bays running full-time, and a paint booth that cost me more than my first house. I'm not a rich man, but I'm a careful one. My daddy used to say, money doesn't talk, it whispers. And you better learn to listen close. I learned. Took me a while, but I learned. I married Bridget when I was 28, and she was 26. She worked the front desk at the dentist where I went to get a chipped tooth fixed after a fistfight with a man who tried to short me on a paint job. She laughed when I told her the story. Said I had a face that didn't know how to lie. I took her out the following Friday. 3 months later, I asked her to marry me on the bank of the Arkansas River, and she said yes before I finished the question. We had our girl, Sutton, a year after the wedding. She's 15 now, plays softball, wants to be a veterinarian, reads books at the dinner table even when I tell her to put them down. Bridget didn't work after Sutton came along. We agreed on it. The shop did well enough that one income covered the mortgage, the truck payment, Sutton's braces, the vacations to Branson every summer. Bridget kept the house. She volunteered at the church. She joined a book club that drank more wine than read books. And that was fine by me. I was grateful for the life we built. I told her so. Probably not enough. About 2 years ago, she started taking interior design classes at the community college. Said she was bored. Said she needed something that was hers. I paid for the tuition. Bought her a new laptop. Drove her to the first class and waited in the parking lot like a fool because I was proud of her and didn't want her walking out alone in the dark. That's where she met him. Not in the class. I found that out later. She met him because the instructor brought in a working contractor as a guest speaker, and Bridget came home that night with his card and a glow on her face. I hadn't seen in years. I thought it was the schooling. I thought she'd finally found her thing. I told her if she ever wanted to remodel our kitchen, she should hire whoever she wanted. She kissed me on the forehead and said I was sweet. His name was Travis Holloway, 38 years old, divorced. 2 boys he had every other weekend. Drove a black F-250 with a custom rack and a magnetic sign on the side that said Holloway Custom Builds. He came over for the consultation on a Saturday in October, shook my hand firm, looked me in the eye, drank the coffee Bridget, poured him, and complimented her on the cabinets she wanted torn out. I liked him. That's the part that still eats at me. I liked him. He started the demo in November. Bridget said it would take 6 weeks. It took 5 months. 5 months of his truck in my driveway. 5 months of his truck in my driveway. 5 months of him drinking my coffee, using my bathroom, parking his tools in my garage. I came home one Tuesday in February to find them eating sandwiches at the patio table out back, both of them laughing at something on her phone, and I felt a thing in my chest I didn't have a name for yet. Just a small cold thing, like a seed. I ignored it. I went inside and washed up for dinner and told myself I was being a jealous old man. The kitchen finished in March. Travis shook my hand again and told me Bridget had been a dream to work with. I wrote him the final check, $41,000, on top of the deposits. He smiled when he folded it into his wallet. I watched him pull out of my driveway and I felt that cold seed start to crack open and grow. 2 weeks later was the dinner. Sutton was at a friend's house for a sleepover. Bridget made pasta, which was unusual because she'd been eating low-carb for almost a year. She opened a bottle of red wine, lit the candles in the new kitchen. I came in from the shop tired, smelling like primer, and she'd already poured me a glass. I should have known something was off right then. We weren't candle people on a Wednesday. We ate. She talked about Sutton's grades, about a trip she wanted us to take to Santa Fe in the fall. Then she got quiet. She swirled her wine. She looked at me and her face did something I'd never seen it do, something flat and almost amused, like she was about to share a joke I wasn't going to find funny. I need to tell you something, Russell. I waited. I figured she was going to ask for more money for her schooling, maybe tell me she wanted to start her own design business. I'd already decided I'd say yes to whatever it was. I've been sleeping with Travis the whole time he was here, and after. I didn't say anything. It's still going on. I'm not planning to stop. I still didn't say anything. I was holding my fork. There was a piece of pasta on it. I remember staring at it because if I looked up, I knew I'd start understanding what she said, and I wasn't ready for that yet. So what? She actually said that. 2 words. The same 2 words I'd hear in my head every single night for the next month before I fell asleep. So what? You're never here. You smell like chemicals. You haven't surprised me in a decade. Travis listens to me. He wants me. You know what he said to me last week? He said I'm wasted on you, and he's right, Russell. I am. I set the fork down. Quietly. The pasta slid off and landed back on the plate. I picked up my napkin, folded it twice, and put it next to the plate. Where's Sutton tonight? At Madison's. I told you that, right? I stood up. My knees felt strange, like they belonged to someone else. Bridget watched me with her arms crossed. She actually rolled her eyes. Are you seriously not going to say anything? I'm going to think. You're going to think. You're going to think. God, Russell. Of course you are. I picked up my keys from the counter where I always set them, walked out the front door, got in my truck, and drove. I didn't go fast. I didn't peel out. I made it all the way to the end of our street before I had to pull over and put my head against the steering wheel, because my hands were shaking too hard to hold it. I sat there for 40 minutes. I thought about my father. I thought about Sutton. I thought about the day Bridget and I closed on our house, how she cried in the empty living room and said she finally had a real home. I thought about Travis Holloway folding my check into his wallet. Then I drove to a Hampton Inn off the highway and got a room. I paid cash. I didn't want her seeing the charge on the card. I sat on the bed with my boots still on, and I made one phone call. Not to a lawyer. Not yet. I called my brother-in-law, Dale, who runs an insurance investigation firm out of Oklahoma City. Dale married my sister 20 years ago, and he's the closest thing I have to family besides Sutton. He picked up on the second ring. I told him what happened. The whole thing. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a long silence, and then he said, Russell, don't go home tomorrow. Don't say a word to her. Don't change a single thing about how you act. Can you do that for me? I said I could. Then I'm going to make some calls tonight. You're going to meet a guy named Curtis Pinn at his office in Tulsa at 8 in the morning. He's the best divorce attorney in the state, and he owes me a favor. After that, you're going to come back to my house in OKC for the weekend, and we're going to figure out exactly what we're working with. I asked him why he wasn't telling me to confront her, to throw her out, to do something. Because, brother, if you go in there hot, you lose. She's already been planning. Women like that don't blurt out an affair on a Wednesday over pasta, unless they think they've got the upper hand. She's expecting you to react. She's expecting you to make this messy. Don't give her what she wants. Give her something else. I lay in that hotel bed and I didn't sleep. Around 3 in the morning, I checked the joint checking account on my phone. There was $16,000 in it. By 4, I'd transferred 14 of it into the business operating account at the shop, an account Bridget had never been on. I left $2,000. Enough that she wouldn't notice immediately. Then I went to the closet at the shop in my head, the one where I kept all my paperwork, and I started running through what was where. The shop was mine. I'd inherited it before the marriage. In Oklahoma, that's separate property if you can prove you kept it separate. And I had. Every dime that came out of that business had gone through the business account, and we lived off what I paid myself as salary. Bridget had never been on the deed. She'd never been on the LLC. My father had drilled that into me when I was 23 years old and didn't even own a girlfriend yet. Keep the shop yours, son. The world changes. People change. The shop is the shop. The house was joint. The trucks were joint. The retirement accounts were joint. The savings was joint. This retirement accounts were joint. The savings was joint. But the shop, the land it sat on, the equipment, the contracts, the goodwill, the 11 jobs my guys depended on, that was mine. And it was worth more than everything else combined. I met Curtis Penn the next morning. He was a small man in a suit that fit him like it was sewn on. He listened to me for 40 minutes without writing a single thing down. Then he opened a yellow legal pad and asked me 3 questions. Did I have a prenup? No. Did I have records proving the shop was inherited and kept separate? Yes. Was I willing to do this the slow way, the right way, the way that would take 8 months, and feel like watching paint dry, but would leave my wife with exactly what she had walked in with and nothing more? I said yes. He smiled then, just barely. He said, "Mr. Mathers, go home tonight. Eat dinner with your wife. Be normal. If she pushes you, tell her you've been thinking and you're not ready to make any decisions yet. You need time. Buy yourself 90 days. In those 90 days, I'm going to do what I do. And then we're going to have a very different conversation, all of us together, in a room I will pick." I drove home that evening, and Bridget was in the new kitchen drinking wine again. She looked surprised to see me. I think she'd been expecting either an explosion or a disappearance. She didn't know what to do with a man who'd just walked back in. "Hi," I said. "Hi. I made an appointment with someone to talk through some things. I'm not ready to decide anything yet. A counselor? Something like that." She nodded slow. I could see her recalculating. The amused flat look was gone now. In its place was something cadgier. She came over and put her arms around my waist and said she was glad I was being mature about it. She said she still loved me in her own way. She said she still loved me in her own way. She said maybe we could find a new arrangement. I let her hug me. I hugged her back. I felt absolutely nothing. And that was the most terrifying part of the whole night, because I knew right then she'd already lost me, and she had no idea she had. Dale drove down the next weekend. He brought a man named Henley with him, a former Tulsa County Sheriff's deputy, who now did private work. We sat at Dale's kitchen table while my sister kept Sutton busy out by the pool. Henley laid out a plan. He put a passive GPS on Bridget's car, pull her phone records through legal channels, document the affair without ever breaking a law, build a stack of papers so thick that no judge in Oklahoma would do anything but rubber stamp whatever Curtis Penn put in front of him. I asked Henley one question. "Can you find out if she's planning anything, money-wise?" He looked at Dale. Dale looked at me. "Why do you ask?" Henley said. "Because she opened a savings account at a different bank 6 months ago. I saw a piece of mail from them. I didn't think anything of it then. I think about it now." Henley wrote that down. What he found out over the next 6 weeks was that my wife had been moving money out of our joint accounts in small amounts for over a year. 200 here, 500 there. Never enough to flag, never enough that I'd notice with the shop running and the bills auto-paying. She'd squirreled away just under $26,000 in an account at a credit union in Broken Arrow. The account was in her name and her sister Marlene's name. Marlene lived in Wichita, and I hadn't seen her in 9 years. Henley also got photographs. Bridget and Travis at a lake house in Grove on weekends. I'd been told she was visiting her mother. Bridget and Travis at a steakhouse in Bartlesville, where they sat on the same side of the booth. Bridget walking out of a jewelry store in Utica Square with a small bag. And then later that night, photographs of her in our bedroom, taken with her own phone, wearing a necklace I'd never bought her. The kind of photographs a woman sends to a man she wants to keep wanting her. And the worst part? The part that made me sit down on the floor of my office at the shop and put my hands over my face. Henley found a notebook in her car when he had the chance to look. She'd left it in the passenger seat one afternoon while she ran into a grocery store. He didn't take it. He photographed every page. It was a planning notebook. She was working out, in her own handwriting, how to leave me without losing the house. She had numbers. She had timelines. She had a column labeled R's weak spots and a column labeled what I'm owed. I read every page. There was a line near the back that said, "He'll fold. He always does. Make him think it's his idea to let me have the house." I closed the notebook and I stopped feeling sorry for her at exactly that moment. The 90 days went by. I lived in my house with a stranger. I ate breakfast with her. I asked about her day. I went to Sutton's softball games on Saturdays and sat next to Bridget in the bleachers and clapped when our daughter got on base. I told Sutton I loved her every single morning before school. I kept my voice steady. I kept my face calm. I did exactly what Curtis Penn told me to do. In June, 2 days after Sutton finished her freshman year, Curtis called and said it was time. He set up a meeting at his office on a Wednesday at 4 in the afternoon. He told me to invite Bridget, to tell her it was time to talk about our future, to not say anything else. I did. She came willingly. She wore a new dress. She'd had her hair done. She'd been expecting this meeting for weeks because I'd been so quiet, and she thought I was finally about to offer her the deal she'd been waiting for. I could see it in the way she walked into that office, like a woman about to win. Her face changed when she saw the man sitting next to Curtis. It was Robert Lindstrom, the most senior partner at his firm, a man whose name I'd seen on courthouse buildings. There was a stack of folders on the table the size of a phone book. Mrs. Mathers, Curtis said, please sit down. We have a lot to go through. She sat. She looked at me. I looked back at her with the same face I'd been wearing for 90 days. Curtis started talking. He didn't raise his voice once. He laid it out the way a surgeon describes an operation. The affair with Travis Holloway, documented since November of the previous year. Photographs, lodging receipts, text messages obtained through the carrier with subpoena. The $26,000 in the credit union, traced from our joint account through 23 separate transfers. The notebook, photographed in full, every page. The fact that my body shop, Mathers Auto Body, was my separate property under Oklahoma statute, inherited, kept separate, never commingled, and therefore not subject to division. He stopped there. He let her sit with it. Bridget's face had gone white. She opened her mouth. She closed it. She tried again. That notebook is private. You stole that. That's illegal. It was photographed in a public parking lot from outside your unlocked vehicle, Curtis said, by a licensed investigator. It's admissible. Russell. She turned to me. Her voice cracked. Russell, please, don't do this. We have a daughter. Think about Sutton. I am thinking about Sutton. You don't have to be like this. I made a mistake. I made a few mistakes. We can work through it. You don't have to destroy me. I didn't say anything. Curtis kept going. He told her what we were offering. She would walk away with her car, her clothes, her personal effects, and the $26,000 she'd already stolen, which we were generously not going to seek recovery of. She would get nothing else. No house, no portion of the retirement, no alimony, no claim against the shop. The house would be sold and the proceeds would go into a trust for Sutton's college. Bridget would get joint legal custody of Sutton with primary physical custody going to me, based on the documentation of her absenteeism, her affair, and her financial misconduct. If she fought any of it, we would file for fraud, for the systematic theft from the joint account, and we would name Travis Holloway as a correspondent in the divorce, which would in turn create discoverable conflicts with the work he'd done at our house, including the question of whether he'd been billing for hours he hadn't worked because he was upstairs with my wife. Curtis slid a piece of paper across the table. Take a week. Talk to whatever attorney you can afford. Come back next Wednesday with an answer. She didn't take a week. She started crying. Then she got angry. She told me I was a coward, that I'd hired men to spy on her, that this was beneath me, that my father would be ashamed of what I'd become. I let her say all of it. When she ran out of words, I finally spoke for the first time in that meeting. You said "so what" to me at dinner. You remember that? She didn't answer. I remember it. I'm going to remember it the rest of my life. You wanted to know if I was going to do anything. Here's what I did. I stood up and I walked out of the office, and I drove home and I packed her things into boxes and I set them on the front porch. By the time she got home that night, the locks were changed. Sutton was at Dale's for the week. I'd already told her that her mother and I were going through a hard time, and that she'd be staying with her aunt for a few days so I could take care of some things. Sutton hadn't cried. She'd looked at me with her mother's eyes and asked one question. Did Mom do something? Yes. With Mr. Calm. Did Mom do something? Yes. With Mr. Calm. Holloway? I looked at her then with new respect and a new heartbreak, because she was 15 years old and she'd already known. Yes. Okay, Dad. That was all she said. Okay, Dad. She hugged me and went to pack her bag. Bridget signed the papers 6 days later. Her attorney, a woman from Tulsa, who I later learned took the case for free as a personal favor, looked at what Curtis had put together and told her she had two choices: sign now and walk away with what was offered, or fight and risk losing custody of her daughter entirely while having criminal fraud charges filed against her. Bridget chose to sign. She cried while she did it. I watched her cry, and I didn't feel anything except a quiet tiredness, like a man who'd been carrying a heavy thing for a long way and had finally set it down. Travis Holloway, I should mention, lost his contractor's license 6 months later when a complaint was filed with the state board over billing irregularities on our project. Henley had documented everything. The hours he'd claimed versus the hours his truck had actually been in our driveway. The materials he'd charged for that didn't match purchase records. It wasn't a huge fraud, maybe $4,000 worth, but it was enough. He had to surrender his license, pay restitution, and complete 200 hours of community service. His current wife, Lacey, who I'd never met but who Henley had located, found out about the affair with Bridget through the legal filings. She left him, took the boys. Last I heard, Travis was working as a foreman for a roofing company out in Glenpool, drawing about a third of what he used to make. Bridget moved to Wichita to live with her sister Marlene. She found work at a furniture store. She tried for a while to keep her relationship with Travis going. But Travis had problems of his own by then, and a woman with $26,000 and no claim on her ex-husband's business is a different proposition than a woman who might bring a house with her. He stopped returning her calls within a month. Sutton told me this. Sutton told me a lot of things. That summer and after. Her mother would call her crying, would tell her I'd ruined her life, would tell her I was a monster. Sutton listened. She loved her mother. She still does. But Sutton is not a stupid girl. And she watched what happened, and she came to me one night about 4 months after Bridget moved out and asked if she could write something down for me. Sure, sweetheart, what is it? Just something I want you to read after I go to bed. She handed me a folded sheet of notebook paper and went upstairs. I waited until I heard her door close. Then I opened it. It said, Dad, I know what she did. I know what she did. I know what she did. You did it right. Thank you for not yelling. Thank you for not making me pick. Thank you for waiting until I was old enough to see it. I love you. Sutton. I sat in my chair in the new kitchen. The kitchen Travis Holloway built. The kitchen where my wife had told me she didn't care if I knew. And I cried for the first time in 11 months. I cried hard. I cried for the man I'd been before that Wednesday dinner. I cried for the woman I thought my wife was. I cried with relief because my daughter was going to be all right, and because some part of me had been afraid she wouldn't be. It's been 2 years now. The shop is doing better than ever. I bought out a competitor last spring, and we run 3 bays now, with 17 employees on payroll. Sutton's a junior. She's still going to be a veterinarian. She got accepted into a summer program at Oklahoma State that takes only 12 kids in the state. I drive her there on Monday mornings and pick her up on Friday afternoons, and we eat dinner at a barbecue place on the way home, and she tells me about every single animal she met that week. I sold the house. Couldn't live in it. Bought a smaller place out by the lake. Just me and Sutton, and a German shepherd named Duke, who I rescued from a guy at the shop. The trust for Sutton's college sits at $140,000 now, between the house sale and what I add to it every month. It'll grow more by the time she needs it. Bridget sees Sutton on holidays. Sometimes a weekend in the summer Sutton wants to go. They're working on something. I don't get in the way of it. Bridget sent me an email about a year ago. A long one. Apologizing for what she'd done. She said she understood now what she'd thrown away. She asked if there was any chance we could try again, or at least be friends. I read it twice and I deleted it without answering. There are some doors that close, and the kindest thing you can do for everybody, including the person on the other side, is leave them closed. A man at church asked me last Sunday how I was doing. Not the polite, "How are you?" The real one. He lost his wife to cancer 2 years back, and he knew the difference. I told him I was doing fine. I told him I'd learned something, going through what I went through, and I'd been trying to figure out how to say it ever since. He waited. I told him that when somebody shows you who they are, the worst thing you can do is argue with them about it. You don't have to yell. You don't have to fight. You just have to believe them. Believe them the first time, and then go quietly to work, and let the people who love you help you, and let the truth do the heavy lifting. He nodded and said, that sounded about right. Sutton's softball team won their tournament last weekend. She hit a double in the championship game. After it was over, she ran over to where I was standing on the fence, sweaty and dirt-streaked and grinning, and she hugged me hard around the neck and said, "Did you see it, Dad? Did you see it?" I had. I saw all of it. And I'm not going to miss any of the rest. I've thought about that Wednesday dinner 1,000 times in the 2 years since, not the betrayal itself. I've made peace with that. What I keep coming back to is the 2 words my wife used. So what? She didn't say them because she was cruel. She said them because she genuinely believed I would fold. She had spent 15 years watching me eat what was put in front of me and pay what was asked of me and say yes when she wanted something, and she'd mistaken my kindness for weakness. That was her real mistake, not the affair. The affair was a symptom. The disease was thinking that a quiet man is a small man. I learned something the night I sat in that hotel room with my boots still on. A man's worth isn't measured by how loud he can yell. It's measured by what he does in the 40 minutes after his life cracks open. You can scream and break things and feel powerful for an hour, or you can pick up the phone and call somebody smarter than you and start building. Bridget wanted the first one. I gave her the second one. That's why she lost. Not because I was cleverer than her, because I was patient when she needed me to be reckless. I think about Sutton, too. About the note she wrote me. Thank you for not making me pick. That sentence has stayed in my chest like a small, warm thing I can reach in and touch when the days get hard. My daughter learned more from that quiet year than she'd have learned from 100 lectures. She watched me not raise my voice. She watched me not say a single ugly word about her mother in front of her. She watched the truth do its own work, slowly, like water on stone, and she came out of it standing straighter than I had any right to expect. If I could say one thing to the man I was, the night I drove away from that house, I'd tell him this. Don't try to win the argument. Win the next 2 years. The argument is where she's strong. The next 2 years is where you're strong. You know how to wake up early. You know how to fix what's broken. You know how to keep showing up for the people who depend on you. That's your country. Stay in it. Travis Holloway lost his license. Bridget lost her home. Neither of them lost those things because I made them lose. They lost them because they built their lives on something soft. And soft things don't hold weight. I just kept my own feet on solid ground long enough for the truths to find them. When your character holds, the world eventually rearranges itself around it. Not in a week, not in a month. But it does. And the person you become while you're waiting is the real reward. The settlement, the custody, the house out by the lake, the dog asleep at my feet right now. All of that is just the world catching up. The real thing I won was the man I had to become to deserve it.